YouTube, how y'all doing? Chris Cornars here for Cryptocurrent, bringing you another iteration of Crypto Basics with Chris K. Today we are talking Solana, the Ethereum Killer, the future, some may call it. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of today's episode, I do want to remind y'all that if you're not already, please go down below and click that subscribe button. And don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed the content today. It really helps us out, gives us a jump on the algorithm, and it lets us know what y'all enjoy so we can keep bringing you content like that. And of course, if there's something specific you want to see or any questions you have, leave a comment down below. I read all of them and I respond to all of them, except for the bot comments. I read like 50 a day. So if I could get a human message, that would make my day, and hopefully I can make yours with a response. Now, let's dive right in, guys. First off, what is Solana? You heard me call it the Ethereum Killer, but we'll dive into what that actually means and why I think it could be that later on in the video. Up first, though, let me give you some background. Solana is an open source project implementing a new, high performance, permissionless blockchain. Essentially, it's faster and easier to process via its block architecture and also easily scalable. All right. However, there have been some security issues in the past. Don't worry, it was just one. They figured it out, and since then, there's been no issues, and prior to that, no issues. So, why Solana? Well, let me just give you this piece from their white paper. All right. It is possible for a centralized database to process 710,000 transactions per second on a standard gigabit network if the transactions are, on average, no more than 176 bytes. A centralized database can also replicate itself and maintain high availability without significantly compromising that transaction rate using the distributed system technique known as optimistic concurrency control. That was a bit of a mouthful. Essentially, what Solana is saying there is that in theory, it's possible for centralized networks to process significantly more than they are, as long as the transactions themselves are significantly smaller than they are. All right. And this also applies to decentralized networks. Okay. And Solana is seeking to kind of live up to the potential that these programs, protocols, projects, whatever you want to call them, what they all in theory could be accomplishing, right? If you didn't see my video on, what smart contracts are, you should go check that out. Very, very relevant topic and will continue to be a relevant topic in crypto for many years. But in that video, I touched on transactions per second. Okay. And right now, Ethereum can only process something like 50 to 100, I think, on a good day. And just a quick reminder, the average financial institution, so your bank, is going to process about 1,000 to 1,500 transactions per second, whereas something like MasterCard, I think in theory, can process up to about 38,000 transactions per second. Solana, however, can process up to 50,000 transactions per second in theory. So significantly better than anything we're seeing in the crypto space right now. All right. That being said, currently they don't have enough users using their applications to really test that upper limit, as right now they're sitting at about 1,000 transactions per second on average, right? That does fluctuate. It goes up, it goes down. But even then, it still is the fastest, transaction processing blockchain that we've seen so far. Some more statistics and numbers for you guys, okay? So throughout Solana's lifetime, there have been 42.5 billion plus total transactions, with the average cost of that transaction being about 1/25,000th of a dollar, or about a quarter of a penny. All right. And finally, you have about 1,247 validator nodes. So, why Solana? Numbers I gave you, let me give you some context, all right? So that average transaction per second puts Solana at about the same as your centralized financial institution where you do your banking with fiat currency, right? But it also puts it at about 10 times the transactions per second that Ethereum can process. And part of the reason that their average cost of transaction is so low, again, about a quarter of a penny, um, is because they can process so many more transactions, right? And as I said, that's just the average transactions per second. That number can fluctuate and go way up, right? Because in theory, they can process up to 50,000 transactions per second, and they're not even close to hitting that number, let alone half of it. Okay. So really great numbers. I'm just trying to give you guys an idea of how well Solana performs compared to Ethereum, right? Which is that what everyone thinks of as that real altcoin, right? The first after Bitcoin. It's the first true platform for people to build applications upon. Solana is something like that, right? You can build applications on it. You can use it just for transactions, buying, selling NFTs, sending them to people, etc. But I wanted to give you an idea of its performance. Up next, we're going to dive into some of those more specific applications. All right. Just to name some of the categories that Solana offers, you have NFTs, okay, non fungible tokens. You have DeFi or decentralized finance. You have general applications, and I'll give you an example of one of those. You also have what they call the Metaplex, and it's my understanding that this is kind of, maybe their term for what the metaverse is, or essentially an area or a digital space for different NFTs to kind of communicate and exist alongside one another. You also have DEXs. DEX stands for decentralized exchange. So, whereas Coinbase is a centralized exchange, a DEX would be one that operates entirely on a blockchain without that intermediary kind of guaranteeing all of the transactions. It's the blockchain itself that does that. Finally, you also have tools and exchanges. Okay. So, think your traditional exchange in crypto. So, some examples of these categories, right? For NFTs, you have every NFT imaginable. Okay. Think just, pretty much just think of it as, if you can think of it as an NFT, there's probably an example of it on the Solana blockchain. All right. As far as DeFi goes, one example is Lagrange. And what Lagrange is a decentralized liquidity network. Basically, they're aggregating, kind of bringing in all these stablecoin pools, working with CX.io to essentially guarantee and provide liquidity to some decentralized, to some DeFi transactions. All right. Really cool. And coming down the line, they're also going to be building in more decentralized finance applications and features into their service. So definitely go check out Lagrange. I'll make sure to include a link down below in the description. All right. As far as applications go, you have, I'm going to butcher this, but Solana Analysis. Essentially, what it does is it's an application that lets you see real-time stats about the Solana network. So its performance, how many transactions, block size, etc. Everything you can imagine. All right. As I said, with the Metaplex, it's essentially NFTs, but a little fancier, right? It uses that sexier word. It uses meta. And then as far as DEXs go, the most interesting I saw was MeanFi. And essentially, that is your typical decentralized exchange where you have all these different possible transactions, people looking to buy or sell different things, all put into a decentralized area where people can come in, pay the price, and that swap automatically happens via smart contracts. Again, shameless self-promotion. Go check out my video on smart contracts if you haven't already. And then finally, as far as tools go, you have OneSoul. What this is, it also kind of falls under the DeFi tag, but I thought it was an interesting tool. It's a cross-chain DeFi aggregator. It's my understanding what it's trying to do is basically pulling in, information or deals, transactions, offers, whatever you'd call them, from different DeFi applications or platforms, putting them into one place so that if you want to buy, say, 5 Bitcoin and there's only 2 available on this blockchain and, one here, one there. Essentially what it would do is you buy the 5 and it pulls in from all those different sources the Bitcoin you are trying to acquire. And then finally, as far as exchanges go, Solana is available on pretty much every major exchange. So think Binance, Kraken, CEX, Coinbase, etc. All the major exchanges that you probably use probably has Solana. And here's a fun one. If you find an exchange that doesn't carry Solana, let us know in the comment section down below. I would generally be interested because all the exchanges I personally use, I know host Solana. All right. And now, of course, everyone's favorite part of the video. I'm sure y'all wondering about the price. All right. Where was it? Where do I think it's going? The fun stuff. Can you make some money here? Well, let me give you some historical price looks. This project's only been out about a year and a half or so. That was the furthest back financial information I could find. But we're just going to start with 2021, keep things simple as we are winding down to the end of the year. I can't believe we're almost in 2022. But anyways, back to the fun stuff. Solana started 2021 at about $1.79, and then it slowly kind of climbed, increased in value there. But then in April, when we saw that crazy just surge of value across the entire, decentralized economy, we also saw Solana go up, and it went up to about $47 on April 24th, then pulled back to about $30 or so throughout the summer until August, when it started to climb. As of September, I think 7th, 2021, Solana hit a $191 new all time high. It pulled back from there and then climbed again. And in November of 2021, Solana hit $258, and it has since pulled back and is holding steady at around $214. So, really exciting time. We're seeing Solana just kind of skyrocket in value, and it's awesome, right? For very good reason. Those performance stats I was reading you earlier may have been a bit dry, but they are really driving what is behind Solana right now. Okay. Because of how well the blockchain performs, how fast it is, how many applications there are, people are starting to use it. And as a result, Solana's value is going to keep on increasing. But enough of that. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we wrap things up in just a minute here. Finally, I'm going to talk about the future price, right? I talked about the historical price. Let's look forward here for just a few seconds. So, one thing I like to look at a lot with crypto projects, as I'm sure many of you are aware of, as I talked about it in my video on Helium, is that I like to look at fixed supply, right? Fixing the supply, capping it at some point in its life, basically provides a guaranteed store of value. If there's a limit on it, you can only make so many, and at some point then people want to keep buying and using it. As a result, that drives up the value. Solana, however, does not have a fixed supply. Instead, what they have is a fixed inflation rate, right? They want to kind of control, if at all possible, the inflation of Solana, for the same reason that we try to, limit inflation throughout kind of traditional fiat economies, etc. All right. So when Solana was first launched, the inflation rate was set to 8%. And then every year it will decrease by 15% of what the inflation rate is. So year two, that inflation rate is going to be 15% of 8% less, right? And it'll keep going that way. And essentially the goal is to get Solana's inflation rate, the long-term fixed target is 1.5% yearly inflation. Okay. So I like this. It's something I had never really heard about actually and had to read a little more about it to understand. But essentially, the idea here is to provide value to Solana beyond when realistically, when other coins stop minting because they've hit their cap and their value goes up because of that. This is essentially the Solana Foundation's counter to that, right? Another way to kind of guarantee or provide an increase in value over time, like you'd see with traditional investments, stocks, etc. And I hope that got you all excited in terms of the price, right? Like this is only going to keep up. The exact number, I couldn't tell you. But right now, sitting at about $214, $215, it's very reasonable to expect Solana to go to $5,000 at least one day because of Ethereum, right? Ethereum is sitting, I think, as the time I'm recording this, around $4,700, which is ridiculous, right? It's insane. But if you look at other, similar coins, Solana being one of those, it's not too unrealistic to see it go there because it is a direct competitor to Ethereum, right? And the reason I'm comparing it to Ethereum for the reasons I said, there's similar platforms essentially for all sorts of developers and companies to build applications upon the Solana blockchain. But beyond that, Solana has a clear advantage in their transaction processing capabilities, their block architecture. They've clearly thought through a lot of this by looking at some of the shortcomings of Ethereum. And I do think that right now, Ethereum is in a bit of a shaky spot. I think it clearly is still that market leader behind Bitcoin. However, so although I think Solana is positioned well down the line, I don't think it's necessarily a slam dunk right away that it will pass it or completely kill Ethereum. But I think it is possible, and it's for the reasons I gave you today. So let me know what y'all think. Do you think Solana is going to be the Ethereum killer? Do you think it'll happen in this bull cycle that will probably be ending soon? And I'll talk about that in another video. Or do you think we'll have to wait and see until the next bull cycle? Or could it happen in the bear? Let me know your thoughts on Solana versus Ethereum or on Solana in general. And as one final reminder, guys, if you aren't already, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video if you did enjoy it. But until next week, I'm Chris Cornars for the Cryptocurrent team, and I hope y'all are staying cryptocurrent.